So you've decided to take an acting class, or a voiceover class, or a dialect class. And now you have to use your voice. But you don't like your voice. It's not uncommon. A lot of us don't like the way we sound in a recording or on camera because when we listen to ourselves played back, what we hear is the way our voice actually sounds, through the air. And generally, the way I describe it is inside my head, I have a very deep and rich and resonant voice. But the moment I hear myself played back on a recording,
I'm like, hi, I'm Keith, and welcome to the Actor's Place.
Right? We sound thin, and we sound tiny, and we sound higher pitched than we're accustomed to hearing inside of our own heads. And that's exactly what you're hearing inside of your own head, is you're hearing phonation, which is the act of creating speech, or voice at least, that happens here. You're vocalizing at your larynx. It comes up through your larynx into your articulators, which are the mechanisms of our speech that shape sound and turn it into language, right? And then you have what are called your resonators, which is these large open empty cavities like the one of your sinuses and your oral cavity and your pharynx, your throat, the back of your throat that goes up into your sinus and down into where your larynx is. All of these large open spaces are great resonators. And so when we hear our voice, this and this is coming through resonators and bone conduction into our ears, and we just sound like Richard Burton. We do. But in truth, it's not how we sound through the air. And if we could hear what's coming through the air out of our mouths into our ears and not hear it through bone conduction, we would sound exactly like we do on that recording. So what do we do about it? Well, there are a few things we can do about it. One thing that people do that's very wrong is they try to speak in a lower pitch. And that's dangerous because every human voice has what's called an optimum pitch range. If you got to a piano and you sang the lowest note you could sing, and then you sang the highest note you could sing without going into your falsetto, a third of the way from the bottom and 2/3 of the way from the top is about where you should be speaking. So if I turn this into a musical note, this would be about a third of the way from the bottom and 2/3 of the way from the top of my vocal range right here. Maybe a few notes down or a few notes up. Right in there, that's basically where I should be speaking most of the time. But people that are concerned about their masculinity, their voice cracking, being taken seriously, working in professional environments will generally pitch their voices down. And they'll do it below their optimum pitch. And when you squeeze yourself into the bottom of your range, the bottom of your vocal range, you don't give yourself a whole lot of room for expression through the use of inflection, because there's no more room to go lower than this pitch. And to go higher means you're going into those ranges that make you uncomfortable, that make you sound unprofessional, unmasculine, or anything else. So you want to relax and find your optimum pitch and speak there. Because when you speak below your optimum pitch, it's not healthy. In fact, it puts an enormous amount of strain on the voice, which increases fatigue, it increases the chances of vocal damage. Also, your voice is going to crack more if you do that. And also, it is not as expressive. So the first thing you should do is probably seek out your optimum pitch and figure out where you are habitually speaking versus where your pitch is. So if you go to a piano and you play the lowest note you can sing and the highest note you can sing, and find that third of the way from the bottom, 2/3 of the way from the top, that's the note you should be speaking at most of the time. But before you do that, you should say a phrase and then lock onto a note and then sing that note and see if maybe like this it's lower than your optimum pitch. And if that's the case, you've got some work to do becoming comfortable fighting the habit of speaking too low. Other people speak too high. No particular reason for it. Sometimes it's about childhood. and realizing that if you spoke as a child to your authority figures, they were more persuadable because it reminded them of the younger, cuter you. And so leading into adulthood, maybe, hey mom, how are you? Can I have $100? When we do that, we are hoping to evoke the memories of our younger selves and encourage mom to give us $100. But this carries over. It can become habituated so that we are regularly trying to manipulate other people, unconsciously, of course, by speaking in a higher pitch, sounding younger, sounding more childlike. All of these things can happen. Optimum pitch is where you want to be speaking.